Hello and welcome. I'm Annette Reeder from thebiblicalnutritionist.com, and today I'm going to share with you dehydrating. Not only why you should dehydrate, but what dehydrator is going to be a really good option and some steps on how to dehydrate. This is just one of my favorite subjects, and I am so excited to get to share it with you today. I have other dehydrating videos. You might want to go check them out. One of them explains how you can dehydrate many different ways, even in your own oven. And yes, that is something you can do. You can dehydrate outside in the sun, and today's a perfect sunny day to do that. Okay, but those are options that I just don't really care about because they have too many flexibilities. I like something that is proven and that I don't have to fuss about or worry about. That's why I love dehydrating with a dehydrator oven. And I'm going to share with you my dehydrator oven in just a little bit. But first of all, you can see I have quite an arrangement here on my counter. I went back and pulled out some of my dehydrated items that I've done over the past several years, and some of the items that I'm going to show you today I just did for this video to show you just how easy it is. So let's look at this. Dehydrating nutritionally. Let's just get the nutrition on the table right now. You are going to save the calories, that's good and bad. You're going to save the protein, that's totally good. Fiber, we get to keep that as well, whereas in juicing we lose the fiber. And then we also get to keep the fiber, the sugar, that's good and bad, and some of the vitamin C and some of the vitamin A. Now if you blanch your foods before dehydrating, then yes, you will lose your vitamin C and your vitamin A. But hey, we're going to get our fiber, we're going to get our carbs, we're going to get our fats, and we're going to get our protein. We're going to get our key nutritional elements into our diet by using dehydrated foods. So if you have a surplus in your garden right now, you need to be dehydrating. I have a friend who's already put up 170 quarts of green beans, and she says, Annette, you can come pick them yourself and just take them home, we're done. And I said, no, you need to start dehydrating them because they'll make the perfect soup in the middle of winter. Okay, so we're going to learn to dehydrate today. So let me just share with you. Just a few minutes ago, I went out and picked this bowl of raspberries. Now, they still have the stems on them. I haven't cleaned them or anything. I actually got in quite an argument with the squirrels out there. They obviously have discovered my raspberries as well. Now, I've already filled my entire freezer and my second freezer with raspberries, so I have nowhere else to go with raspberries. So this past week, actually on Saturday, a couple days ago, I picked like 4 big buckets of raspberries. That filled all the freezers, and then I had overflow. So what I had to do was dehydrate. So since I had already filled my freezers, I then had to dehydrate. So I took several of these sheets, these are stainless steel trays that go in the dehydrator, and just put my raspberries on top and dehydrated. I now have a couple quarts of dried raspberries. Now raspberries and any food that you dehydrate is going to take less space. So this would have taken several gallon bags of freezer space, whereas now I have 1 jar of dehydrated raspberries. Now I could go even further with this, which I have done with my kale in the past. You can see my kale is very powdered. So I put it through the dehydrator, and it would have taken a couple jars to stuff it in. So then instead I threw it in my blender, brought it down to a powder, and then I can fill less jars. So this is just an exceptional way to store leftover food or extra food. So I could easily powder these raspberries down. Now to think about your serving size, so 1 serving of raspberries would be, depending on your desire for raspberries, would be about this many raspberries. Okay, so dehydrating this, I'm going to end up with, I'm going to take it from this size down to 1/2 that size of amount of space that it's going to take up. Then if I want to pulverize it in the blender, it's going to go down to probably about 2 teaspoons. So when you think about this, I'm going from a big bowl to a serving size to just 2 teaspoons. You realize the amount of storage space it takes to store dried foods. Now, that's just one thing, is the less space that it takes. So I could easily take this mason jar at any time when I decide, wait a minute, I need another mason jar, then I might throw these in the blender and then put these in a sealed bag. and they will store for a long time. And then I get my mason jar back. So that's one way. So dehydrating, it saves space. It saves electricity because I don't need to store it in my freezer. And it's going to save time later because it's already processed. And so, plus we get to keep our nutritional value. So definitely saving space and saving time later. And when they're dried like this, you can just eat them out of the jar and they're the perfect snack. We don't have to worry about, okay, what do we need to take the kids? What do we need to take for the kids to eat while we're on our trip? Just get a little baggie. In fact, what I've done with my grandkids is I open up my jars and I say, okay, go ahead and make your own trail mix. And it's a delight. They get to put in what they want. We put a Ziploc bag for every day that we're going to be traveling together, and they have their own personally chosen trail mix. So this is just an exceptional thing to think about. Now, I write about this in the Proverbs 31 Prepper book, and this is our new updated version, which is exciting because it has so much more information that I didn't have in the last book, updated website links and all of that. Remember, if we get into trouble, you may not have the internet. So you need something printed in your hands, and it gives you several pages of workbook to also keep track of where you are putting all of your prepper items and how you're preparing for your family. So if you don't have my new updated version of the Proverbs 31 Prepper book, I highly recommend that. Go to our website, thebiblicalnutritionist.com, and you'll get it for a less price than Amazon and everyone else. All right, so let's just go through dehydrating. You can dehydrate meats. And to be quite honest, I'm not a jerky lover. I just like to keep my teeth, and it always seems like you just kind of gnaw on something for hours, and it's like, and then you spit it out. It's like, no, it just doesn't do anything for me. But with the dehydrator that I just got, it came with a cookbook. And I thought, okay, I'm just going to go ahead and make jerky. So I went to the meat market at the store that I do all my grocery videos from, which is Tom Leonard, so you might want to check those videos out. And I said, okay, what is the best meat to make jerky? He said, above and beyond, it's going to be your London broil. So I bought the London broil because they kind of qualify their meat and how it's raised and what food it's been given. So I bought their London broil, and I decided, okay, I'm just going to make some jerky. Well, that was over the weekend, and this jar is almost all gone because I got to tell you, this was the best jerky I have ever made in my life. Actually, I've only made it one other time, so it was better than last time. But I've had venison jerky, and I just didn't really care for it. This is delicious, and I've served little bits of it to everyone who's come over to visit, and they're all like, okay, that is really good. Now, what I liked about it in the dehydrator versus the oven, a lot of my friends will just use their oven to make jerky, is because the dehydrator has more of an even flow. Now, I've been dehydrating for years, and there's times I have to restack my trays or rearrange some of the food just to kind of keep it all evenly dehydrating at the same rate. Well, with this dehydrator, I didn't have to worry about it. So my jerky was done in 3 hours. I was expecting an overnight experience, and it wasn't. It was 3 hours, and it was done. Now, we do store it in the refrigerator just because it's meat, and it just gives me peace of mind. But yeah, this is so good. You definitely need to try it. And really what I did was I soaked it in some soy sauce and some Worcestershire sauce overnight, and then the next day trimmed it nice and thin. Actually, I trimmed it, then soaked it, and then put it on the trays to dehydrate in 3 hours. Voila, it was done. And my house smelled really good too. So yeah, I love the cookbook that came with this dehydrator. So meats. Now I've also dehydrated cooked chicken. Now this was raw, but I've done other meats. So I've done cooked meat, cooked hamburger, cooked venison, and cooked chicken, and dehydrated them. And then I can rehydrate them in a soup or a stew or something like that. That's really the only way I like dehydrated meats, unless it's now this new jerky. So I will rehydrate them in something liquidy. And it takes a little bit of while for them to rehydrate fully so they don't taste like they've been dried. But definitely you can store your meat. So if you're finding meat on sale, hopefully you've already watched my how to stock up on meat sale video, and you've got extra meats, your freezer is full, so it's time to dehydrate. So cook the meat, dehydrate it, and then store it either in mason jars that are sealed tightly with an oxygen absorber or in some vacuum seal bags. So meat is number one, and we need to stock up on meat just to have that protein in our diet. So that's number one. Next is I did the other recipe in here, which was the nuts. So I cooked these almond nuts, and they soaked overnight in water. And so I had about 3 to 4 cups of almonds, with some, they were totally filled with water over top, and I had to add extra water throughout the night because they were absorbing so much. And just to eat them at that point when they were soaked just was so much better than just the regular raw, that haven't been processed, because it was just softer. But then I drizzled them in a little bit of honey and some seasoning and dehydrated them. And it took a little bit longer because the honey was so liquidy and sticky. But these are a sweetened almond. You could do it now. You could store it in your mason jars, and then you have a treat ready to go for the holidays. Plus, you could make these into small mason jars. Let me see if I have a pretty one here. If you have a jar like this would work really well, or a smaller jar. Looks like all my pretty jars are in the cabinet. Even this one is smaller. So if I were to fill this with some almonds and put a ribbon around it and give it as a Christmas gift, you already are ready to go, and you did it in the summer, and your holidays will not be so crazy. Yes, so this is a great gift. Or if you're into giving gifts during the festivals of our Lord, this would be a great gift to give because it's one of the foods talked about in Scripture. Okay, so that is the almonds. So any type of nut could be used in the dehydrator. You could even do chickpeas. You can make your own roasted chickpeas. Now, sometimes I do this in the oven, but now I'm starting to do it more and more in my dehydrator because once again, it's just a little bit more even on the heating cycle, and it's got a timer. And that's the other thing about dehydrating is I need an oven that's going to work for me, and I don't have to worry about my timer. So my dehydrator works for me because you can't burn the food. So yeah, dehydrating your chickpeas in the dehydrator is so much better than using the oven. All right, so those are kind of your nuts and your legumes, and you can do this anytime year round and be storing up extra food and yet have it available without having to use your refrigerator or freezer space. Now, I also have here, I have my pumpkins. In the fall, when those after Halloween, there's many pumpkins available, and grocers just want to give them away. It's like, yeah, or get rid of all the pumpkins. Well, I will take them, especially if they're the pie size, and dehydrate them. So I will cook it down, and then the liquid, I will usually have to put on a liquid tray. So this dehydrator has a really nice tray that has an edge around the side. And so you could put your liquid in here and then let it dry. Now, a dehydrator does put out heat. So I will use my dehydrator in the garage if it's summertime because I don't need extra heat in the house. But in the wintertime, I'll definitely leave it in the inside of the house in the kitchen to dehydrate so I can get that heat. But yeah, you can put it on this. Now, another option, depending on the thickness of your liquid or your substance, would be to use the mesh tray liners. So, and it would work on here as well. These are really small holes. So sometimes, depending on the thickness of the liquid of your substance, you could just use these mesh liners. Now, so this will work really good when I do watermelon and cantaloupe, my mangoes. I've got all of that here. It's just something to just, if you're like, oh, I just want something sweet, to just go into your pantry, open up your jar of dehydrated mangoes, take a bite, and then go on with your day. And that's all you needed to kind of qualify that sweet tooth. So this is another way of dehydrating. Now this one has several of these mesh liners that come with it, which is an exceptional idea. Okay, now another thing about dehydrating is to save you from wasting food. I don't know how many of you have bought these large containers of produce, especially your greens, and then you're halfway through and life gets busy, you forget to use them, and all of a sudden you're like, I don't know if I should open that. That might smell really bad. And sometimes my husband will come to me and say, does this smell bad? And I usually just say, I assume so. I'm not going to open that. But I don't want to get to that point. So what I want to do if I realize, hey, we're not going through that as fast as possible, and this has already been pre-washed, so then I could just take that spinach and put it on my dehydrator trays. And this is why I always have my dehydrator set up somewhere. And just throw these leaves on here and then put it in the dehydrator, maybe overnight. Let them dry out. They can be in a single layer, and I know it says to always do it in a single layer. That's just for even drying. But there are times that I've had a couple layers on top of each other. It still dries. It still does really good, especially something as simple as your spinach. So I could dry this in my dehydrator, maybe overnight. I don't even have to worry about it, and it will be perfectly crisp in the morning. And that's another reason why I love my dehydrator. Now, so besides all of the foods that I have here, I have strawberries, I have my lemons and my oranges, which is perfect to throw in your hot tea and get that nice infusion of that citrus flavor. I told you about the almonds and the raspberries. So over here, I have my zucchini. Now, sometimes you just get so much zucchini in the garden that you're like, I don't know what to do with it all. You're trying to give it away. Well, dehydrating it into small little cubes is going to save it for a soup later, or maybe even a dressing mix, or some type of, you could add it to your mashed potatoes and no one would even know. So other ways. I had too many green onions in my yard, not the wild ones that you mow down, but the ones I had actually grown, so I dehydrated them. So I have my own dehydrated green onions here. Stevia. You know, instead of buying stevia, grow it yourself and then dehydrate it and you always have it. So we have pineapple, we have mangoes, we have watermelon. Now, when I told a friend of mine that I was doing a dehydrator video, and I'm like, I don't really know what to do, what to dehydrate. She says, well, do bananas. Well, to be honest, in the past, I didn't like my bananas that were dehydrated. But this time, I thought, well, let me just see. So they had it in here, and I thought, well, it's not uncommon to dehydrate bananas, so I'll just go ahead and try it. But this time, I dipped them in lime juice. Now, I was out of lemon juice, but lemon juice would work too. And I did, and then I dipped them in that, and then I dipped them in coconut. So I have this jar of coconut-covered banana chips, and I gotta tell you, this is the best food you could give your grandkids. It is so delicious. I don't even know if they're gonna get any because this is so good. Another option was to dip them, let me see if I got the right jar for you here. Yeah, this jar here. Dip them in nuts. So I have some finely chopped pecans. So I dipped my banana chips in the pecans, and these are good too. You could have added some cinnamon to the pecan mixture and dip your bananas in that and then dehydrate. I'm telling you, there's no reason to ever go without a good snack, and bananas are still relatively cheap. They haven't gone up in price. So think about different ways that you can use your dehydrator. And then if you have leftover bread, so I have some leftover challah bread slices, I'm gonna slice these up and make them into croutons in my dehydrator. Sometimes when I do it in my oven, they get half burned because I forget to pay attention to it. But my dehydrator, I don't have to worry about it. Now, here's something important. Hear how that shakes? All right, these are perfectly dehydrated. These are stuck. I put these in here last night. They were not fully dehydrated, so I'm gonna have to throw them back in the dehydrator and finish, because obviously one or two of them was still soft, and that moisture has moved into all of them, and I gotta quickly redehydrate them or they will go bad. So remember, we're always here to help you understand and learn God's recipe for excellent health. And dehydrating foods is totally biblical. Now, maybe they didn't have a London Sunshine dehydrator back in biblical days, but they did dehydrate. And as you notice, I've got my pineapple out here. Dehydrated pineapple is so delicious. It is like the perfect treat. Travels anywhere you want to go. And then I also have my herbs here. So in my yard, I've got oregano, I've got thyme, I've got basil, I got cilantro, even some of my other herbs I've got here that make a perfect tea. So all of this can be dehydrated. Like I showed you, the stevia, the mint. You could have your own delicious tea throughout the entire year and not spend a dime. Most of these, the basil is going to die off. It's an annual, but everything else is a perennial. So it's free food. And if you dehydrate it, because you already have a dehydrator, then you have free food throughout the entire year. And that's where I say, yay, I love to save money, and cha-ching, if it saves my pocketbook, then I'm happy with that. If you have any questions, put it in the comments down below. We'll try to answer your questions. I have a team that's now helping me to answer your questions, because you matter to me. You matter to me because you matter to God, and God loves you with an everlasting love. He's loved you from the moment of conception all the way through your entire life. He's loved you and is ready and waiting to have a relationship with you. I am Annette Reeder from thebiblicalnutritionist.com, always here to serve you God's recipe for excellent health.